Hello, Todd. Thank you for coming back on the Sutliffian Report. I've been sharing your last article for a number of reasons. This last article, 9/11 plus 20, actually provided a lot of documented proof of everything I was seeing and feeling about the present level of national security, which is pretty much non-existent, unfortunately. I honestly had to admit, I never thought I'd be saying we are less safe today than we were 20 years ago, but here I am saying it. And, as I finished saying it, here I am reading your article. I think you just sent it to me that day. And it starts with a well delivered punch to wake. I love the way this starts. You start out with a piece from the staff report of the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States. And it's titled 9/11 and Terrorist Travel. It says this: the success of the September 11 plot depended on the ability of the hijackers to obtain visas and pass an immigration and customs inspection in order to enter the United States. It also depended on their ability to remain undetected while they worked out the operational details of the attack. If they had failed on either count, entering and becoming embedded, the plot could not have been executed. So how bad is it today, given that statement close to 20 years ago?
Well, unfortunately, we are still seeing with regularity the entrance of terrorists, people with terrorist intent and connections, as well as spies and war criminals and all sorts of bad people getting into the country on all kinds of visas. Uh, I'm not saying that we haven't improved some of the processes that were applicable in those days, 2001 and the late 1990s, but they're still beatable. We still are finding these cases, people entering the country who should not be able to enter the country. A recent example would be a British citizen, a subject. We have a visa waiver with them, but you still have to go online and apply and say you're coming from the UK. And he comes into the country, no questions asked, and uh, conducts a terror attack in North Texas. He takes hostages, threatens to kill them unless a certain Pakistani terrorist was released from federal
Oh,
custody in
that's
the
right.
Fort Worth area. Uh, that was a person who was on the MI5 or MI6's watch list and had been, in on the radar of counterterrorism
That's
specialists.
only this summer, correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
So these things are still happening, and that should never have happened. And whatever else is going to happen, and trust me, we will see some more, is going to happen because there was an OIG, a DHS or DOD Office of Inspector General report that just came out a week or two ago from the time we're recording this, that said that during the Afghan evacuation, that the administration brought in a lot of Afghans who were never vetted. They just were let into the country without any vetting. And at least 50 of them, according to a different report, had security derogatory intelligence on them about, their risk
And this
factor.
was the biometrics that they never even attempted, correct?
Right. 21 years later, this kind of thing is like, what are we doing? How is that sort of thing happening 20 years later? Well, I think the reason is because we don't care anymore. It's been 20 years. Let there be another attack, and then we'll care about it. Until then, we have these other issues that we can politically gain from. So let's get the political gain, and then, we'll clean up the blood later.
Your last book, it talked about how national security was not a political issue. It wasn't a Democratic issue. It wasn't a Republican issue. It was an American issue. And this is just, it's kind of shocking no matter how I look at it. I agreed. I mean, I was amazed because you provide evidence. You don't just say stuff, you provide evidence. and you provided an amazing amount of evidence for both sides, Republican and Democrat, doing what was important to make the country secure. And
Yeah, well, the last time that I know of when the country was really united and unified and the polls were all about the same on both sides of the partisan divide was in the year or so after 9/11. Unfortunately, the bloodshed and the attacks brought us together in a way that we haven't been ever since. Uh, Over time, the Republicans became the party of national security. The Democrats became the party of, hey, free and easy, complacency like we were before 9/11. They're the 9/10 party. And one of the reasons is because they have this ideology about them that worrying about things like Islamic terrorism is Islamophobia. We can't do that. It's discriminatory. And they've been sidetracked by this really bizarre ideology. And ultimately, I think that we will see something similar to what happened in Israel with this, when the doves in Israel, the Labor Party, the liberals in Israel, started to just be on the side of the Palestinians and against border security until the mid 2000s. And there was this massive spate of terror attacks, bloody, terrible terror attacks inside Israel. And then they were just moved out of power completely and haven't been in power since because of that. They didn't want to build the wall, the separation barrier. They didn't want to do any of the things that you have to do to keep your population safe. I think that's where we are. That it's eventually going to be a circumstance that none of us want, that brings them back on board.
well, you have a new book coming out that addresses a lot of this. And I'm going to tell everybody you have to go out there and buy this book. But I don't want to get out of this article yet. But, oh my gosh. I do want to mention, I want to go back. And one of the things in your article that still kind of kills me is this. You mentioned this guy, Al Falaj, and the reason it gets me is, and this is where I wanted to go back to that, is because he came somehow on an F2 student spouse video. And
Yeah.
I guess what bothers me the most about this, and we're talking 2011. Yeah, granted that's 10 years ago. And the one you just talked about is only a few months ago. Holy cow. Is anyone, I mean, I thought that there was a process for vetting visas. Is there no vetting being done of the visas?
Well, there are still all kinds of problems with vetting student visas and J. Those are F. They're called F visas, J visas, and then there's the J2s and the F2s for family members and all the rest of this. And H-1B visas. We just had a Pakistani doctor for the Mayo Clinic convicted on terrorism charges. He came in on a on a J visa to work for Mayo. I'm sorry, an H-1B visa to work for Mayo. He's a surgeon. They didn't do any vetting on him, probably because he just said, "Well, I'm a doctor." He comes over and he's immediately plotting to use his position at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota to conduct terror attacks. He said, "I'm behind enemy lines. I use this to get behind enemy lines." There was no vetting that went on with that guy's H-1B visa, the specialty work visa. The case that you're talking about, Alaj, I think I forgot.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's a stunning case too, because that guy was in the Afghanistan camps, the Al Qaeda terrorist camps, with the 9/11 hijackers at the same time. and he comes over on lying on his visa on an F2 visa. His wife was a student, so he gets in on the F2, and they go to Oklahoma City. And what does he do? He starts to do a pilot training in Oklahoma City, which is where the hijackers trained. And it was only then, years later, that they ran his fingerprints and found that his fingerprints were all over the camp in Afghanistan. They finally just recently busted him in 2018 and sentenced him to prison. You know, this was a guy who was, and he was plotting to do terror attacks again. So it's just amazing that we are still seeing this sort of thing. And I think that part of the problem is that we never fixed the interoperability, the sharing of certain kinds of data in a systematic, checkable way where you can easily check. You run somebody's print, you run somebody's biometrics, you run something against all these classified databases. They're still not talking to each other, and so you have gaps. And people
wasn't that the original purpose of forming DHS?
It was. And, you know, they did do a lot of sharing and extra sharing and fusion centers and the rest, but there are still problems between, you know, the CIA and the NSA and the British intelligence services. You know, they call them the Five Eyes, our closest allies.
Yes.
And us talking with those intelligence services in a timely way. And a lot of it's just human error. Somebody just didn't check. They didn't run the database. They have such backlogs that the backlogs become the priority. We have to get these people in because they're going to pay tuition to these universities. Universities don't want any delays. They want their money. So, you know, there's this big rush to clear the backlogs on all these. The companies, the tech companies, want their H-1B visa holders to come in and start working for less than American workers would. And so there's a lot of pressure from industry and universities, and it ultimately has to do with money to hurry through. We've had, in the last couple of years, probably 20 or 30 espionage cases involving Chinese students who were sent here by the Chinese military to say that they were not in the military and to spy on the research being done in our best, research and development.
I think it was you who was talking about how you could just go on Facebook and find these guys showing off in their military uniforms in their Facebook.
Right. There are a few of those cases where, you know, they had the name, and all anybody would have had to done is just like Google search the guy's name, and they would have had a photo of that person in uniform from the PLA with the medals and everything.
Yeah.
And the box checked on the application, have you ever served in any military? No. I mean, some of this is not rocket science, but, you know, I will say this, that the Trump administration put together by executive order something called the National Vetting Center, and I talk about that in the article.
Yes.
The piece that I did toward the bottom. And to its credit, the Biden administration kept that one. I think that may be the only thing Trump ever did that they haven't kept, but they kept that piece. Nobody's ever written about it or talked about it since. In the media, when Trump rolled that out, it was to this widespread disapproval and condemnation that it was racist and it was going to be used against Muslims and all this. But they kept that. And I'm in touch with some of the people that are associated with that, and I have a sense of what's going on with it. And I think that the National Vetting Center that Trump set up offers a lot of solutions out of this mess that we're still in. So just remember, the National Vetting Center, they've got a website and everything. They're under ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they're trying to create interoperability for different kinds of for these programs, the J and the F visas and the K visas and all of these different visas that we're handing out by the millions and millions with no enforcement on the back end. Typically, if you bust your visa deadline or you don't meet the requirements of checking in and reporting, there's like nobody there to care. In a lot of cases, it's a big problem.
That is if we don't enforce things, it's
Yeah,
just like it's like Democrat-run states. If you don't report for trial, what are they going to do? And I hate to put it that way, but I live in Libland, New York, and they let people out as soon as they catch them. And
everywhere.
yeah, I was just hearing about a case in Tennessee this very week where a man came to someone's door, threatened to kill them. The cops said, "Look, normally we would put this person in jail this night. However, due to the political climate, if we press charges on him, it won't make a difference. He will never be prosecuted." Like, yeah, this is a friend of mine who got threatened. This is in Nashville. And yeah.
Well, I live in Austin, and they're just I have a police officer friend, Austin Police, who was telling me, nobody wants to charge anybody with anything because they just get let out immediately and charges dismissed. Why should we waste our time? And serious violent crimes.
Yes. We can't be safer now. If we're not safer today, is there? I know your next book says a lot. Can you tell us a little bit more about your next book? I'm really excited. I personally would like to have it today, but I have to wait. But
thanks for asking. It's really has just been open for pre-orders, so I can actually talk about it now. But it's called Overrun: How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Mass Migration Crisis in American History. And it's being published by Post Hill Press. And there are chapters in there about the international flavor of the mass migration hitting our border from 150 different countries, coming from all nations of the Middle East and Africa, and that we are going to be facing very serious in the coming years national security threats as a result of this. We've had 66 people on the terror watch list cross that border and get caught, thankfully, just in the fiscal year 2022 so far.
oh wow.
We had a bunch last year, 16, I believe. Between last year and so far this year, we've got like 82 people who are already on the FBI's terror watch list. And so we also have people coming from places like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, places like Congo, where they are tribal militias that are just slaughtering people everywhere. We have no idea who any of these people are. They come to the border without any identification, say, "My name is Mickey Mouse," and we don't know if they're a warlord or a victim of warlords because we just let them in. The book is really about how this crisis began and why this thing started. We've had almost 4 million apprehensions at the southern border in 18 months. This is insane. We haven't had anything near a number like that in the history of the United States. This is the rate at which they're coming across the border is greater than what came through at Ellis Island. In another few years will have been half of what came through Ellis Island legally, I might add, in 67 years at Ellis Island. That's was a page in history. Ellis Island is a storied page in the American history.
And Ellis Island did additional things that we are not doing that we could be doing that would protect Americans. One of the
Right.
things they did was health checks.
Yes, they did. And if you didn't pass the health check, you were on a boat back to wherever you came from. Yeah, there's no health checks going on now. And
We would
certainly,
actually, I mean, one of the interesting things is about Ellis Island is if there was a way that we could cure you or help you, and then you could enter the States, we would keep you there on Ellis Island. We would give you the therapeutics or treat you, and then you would be released into the States. So it's not like we don't have some of those talents still, but we're not doing it is the factor. I'm just kind of
that's right.
shocked. I mean, you've even shared about if we're just looking, back to 2020, anybody could come into the States, say they had I mean, and you said the agents, the border patrol agents were going there and they were picking up all these people with COVID and bringing them to Texas hospitals. And
Yes, that was happening for a long time, all during COVID. People coming in over the border who were sick with COVID. Mexican hospitals were overwhelmed, so they called an ambulance at our bridge, and they would cross in, and the ambulance would meet them and take them to the U.S. hospital. And then our own hospitals became so jammed up that we had to start airlifting them to interior hospitals, which then became jammed up as well. We couldn't move them in off the border fast enough.
and how is this assist? I mean, it's nice that we can assist other countries, but we don't even know who. There's no way to do any vetting when we're doing this kind of work. That's the part that's scary. And do we even? I think the one that got me. I was watching a video of the current head of DHS who couldn't even answer questions about how many people have. I mean, this is the questions on the biometrics. How many people from Afghanistan that we brought in are currently identified as having relations to terrorism? How many of them that are identified do we know where they are? And he wouldn't even answer that.
Right. Well, we did import terrorists during that airlift, just as those of us who were watching it happen said out loud over and over again. Anybody who would ask us, we're saying we're watching what they're doing, and we're like, that's Afghanistan. Like half the population is involved in some way, form, or fashion with the Taliban or ISIS or Al Qaeda or like any of those groups, and fought for them, participated in their attacks, aided and abetted, whatever, their family members. That's not a population that's very clean, so to speak, to just fill up airplanes and drop off here inside the country. Insane.
Todd, what can we do today? I mean, I have I have some friends that are running for office in Congress. I know people across the country that want to make America more secure. What can we do? I mean, it seems like the only thing I can say is we have to hope for a red wave, because it seems like unless we change what's currently in power, we're in trouble. But what can we do when there is a change?
For one thing, you have to be aware of what is the problem. The problem, if we're talking about 9/11, it's all about vetting. But I think that a lot of people, it's complicated stuff, so it's hard to understand. So one thing is to just move information to our world, move the information out. Make sure that your congressmen and women, your people in the Senate and state legislatures have this information and are being squeaky wheel noisy about it, because there is this national security vetting project that I think is very hopeful. That needs to be maintained. It can't be closed. It has to be resourced. Whatever they need, give them. There has to be appropriations and vote. Unfortunately, if Republicans are the ones who are primarily interested in national security and prevention, vote Republicans. But for Democrats, they need to be persuaded that we're all in this together, man. Your kids are going to get killed just as easy as mine. This has nothing to do with all these other issues. Go ahead and keep your separation on all the issues you want to be, but on this one, we ought to be one unified voice. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be.
It's just like your last book said. This is national security should not ever be a political issue. It has to do with us as a whole, not a little bit over here and a little bit over there. It's the entire country as a whole.
I believe that, but so I mean, as far as what to do is, unless the Republicans are, which is the party of national security, I guess, unless they are in charge of the White House, I think that we're more vulnerable because the other party doesn't seem as concerned or are so protective of the minority groups that from which threats come that they won't dare investigate or put pressure on those groups for this ideology that says, oh, we're just using this national security threat to oppress, which is the narrative out there. That's what their narrative is. They say it all the time. You Islamophobe. You're an Islamophobe. It's about white supremacy, not Islamic supremacy. They'll say that. They say it all the time.
One of the things we've talked about in the past is one of the loopholes that provides problems, but I was wondering if you could comment on the Flores loophole. I think it was the Flores loophole we were talking about.
Yeah, this is a kind of a longer conversation, but suffice it to say that the courts in the Ninth Circuit, liberal courts, some years ago required, 2015, required the DHS to release kids and families from detention. It directly contravenes the law, which says that everybody who illegally enters has to be in custody for as long as it takes until we deport you. And this judge, her name is Dali G, required that DHS release them within like 21 days. So that means there's a cap on how long you're gonna be in custody with 3 square meals a day. So if you're a family with young kids, you're coming in to get that. You're coming in to get that. You're going to get released. No matter where your case is, you're going to get released. Well, what happens when you get you released? You just disappear, man. They're never going to come get you. So millions and millions are coming in for this loophole. And that's got to be closed. That Flores loophole is incredibly damaging more than anything else to the country and to the kids and the families that are coming for it. They're dying in droves. Pregnant women and mothers of young children, floating in the Rio Grande, drowning, dying on the trails, getting in here to get to the Flores loophole. It's probably, it ranks up there with among the most evil policies that has ever existed in the country, and it has to be done away with. It must be gotten rid of.
Wow.
And Trump came close. They went all the way through the process, and then the Democrats sued on behalf of this incredible evil and got it all the way to the Ninth Circuit again within a week of Trump leaving, and he didn't have enough time to appeal to the Supreme Court. If he would appeal to the Supreme Court, that thing would be dead now. And when Biden came in, they said, yeah, we won't appeal. So it survives another 4 years. It's incredible.
Wow. Todd, tell everybody where they can pre-order your book, because I think this is. I'm going to tell everybody you need to pick this up, order it. We need to get as many people as we can to pre-order this book before the election. Here's why I'm saying pre-order it before the election. Let's convince Post Hill Press to release this book before the election. Let's put a massive order in.
Well, yeah, that's beyond my pay grade. But yeah, I think, I mean, if there was enough interest, might help persuade. Uh, but that's a production issue I don't know much about. But they're talking about releasing it in December, so um, this is information that I think would be very useful for. It provides a baseline for people to talk about illegal immigration and the border crisis that's underway in a knowledgeable way, and it's very illuminating about what happened and why we have to do something to stop it. So but here's the thing: is assuming that Republicans take some control of the House and maybe even the Senate, they are now, it's the ball will be in their court. They'll have to do something. And I think that the book will come out just in time to remind everybody what the issues are and how we got here, because there'll still be 2 more years of Biden and these policies. So I think the book will still be very helpful for the coming new Congress.
I'm going to be recommending it to the person I think will be my next congressional candidate. Is the candidate, but I'm hoping my next representative, LaRon Singletary, and he's a former chief of police. So when he gets in, give him a call, because I know that he'll stand in your corner.
Well, I mean, as far as people wanting to pre-order, I'm hoping you can. There's a link.
Yeah,
this came out on Saturday. I don't have it handy, but
I will put it up on the screen so everybody can do that. Everybody's got to, we got to share this stuff out, because this book is important and it can change policy. It's one of the reasons I like Todd's work, because it's so documented. And this is the kind of stuff that makes Todd the college professor. And
I think I have about 700 citations in this book.
Your students must love you. Oh my gosh. Oh, Todd, thank you for joining us. It's I would love to be in one of your classes someday, because just the idea of seeing of getting this information that has to be out, and I think learning the tidbits of how you do what you do. I mean, how you get this information. And one thing I keep saying, that why I say keep putting you up and telling people they got to listen to you, is because you don't do what the average journalist does today. They talk about things. You go and get the truth. You've been down to the Triborough. That's the right word, right?
To the down on the Darien province.
Yes.
I mean, the book is filled with my reporting from the scene, and it's illuminated most by interviews with the immigrants. They tell you why they're coming and how they hear the policies that are coming out of the White House, and they're like, should I stay or should I go? We're going. And they'll tell you. They tell me all the time why they're coming.
Well, while we're on that, before I let you go, the one thing, it's not that long ago we talked about this, though, but there was a time when Haitians decided they wanted to go back. And we're talking about policy, and they're hearing about it from the White House. What did the Biden White House do that made the Haitians want to go back?
Well, there was a moment there when there were political pragmatists inside the White House that were looking at what was happening at the border and, worried very deeply about the midterm elections. And they, began doing Trumpian strategies and tactics to shut it down. And one of those was air deportations back to home countries. They did that. This Biden administration was not strictly open borders all the time, because there was this faction that came in, and they started with the Haitians. They started deporting thousands of Haitians back to Haiti. And when they did that, I was in Mexico on the Mexican side, and they came running by the thousands back south over the Rio Grande into Mexico to get away from this thing, because air deportations work. They work. They increase the odds that you're not going to get in. You're going to be on a plane all the way back to Port-au-Prince.
And you got this information straight from the migrants running back.
I was in the camps. I was in the park when they're still wet with all their kids. I'm like, where are you coming? They're like, they're doing deportations. I mean, what else do you want?
And that's the point. That's why I say your work is extremely important. Thank you again, Todd. We'll have to have you back soon.
Anytime.
We're going to fight to get your book out quick. God bless.
I appreciate that. Anytime. Thanks for magnifying these issues.